What's up, guys? Welcome to Champion Picks. It's Jared Champion here. I'm coming at you with my Week 6 fantasy football pickups video, and then I also just have some notes on some players that I think should be traded or traded for. So let's get started here. I really want to say thanks to everybody who's watching these videos. When I started making these, at least the fantasy ones, I had like 50 views, and then last week I had almost 1,200 views on this video. So it seems like people like it a lot, and I'm going to keep doing it. So let's look back at some of our old picks, and we can kind of judge how we did. These aren't only Week 5 picks. This is just how all the picks that we've kind of talked about have done, our pickups in fantasy for the year. If you look at the top, Hunter Henry, I told you about Hunter Henry last week. He finished the second-ranked tight end in fantasy. He had 3 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. He's in the good. He's in the green, the good. Also in the green, Jordan Howard, told you 3 weeks ago, I think, that pick up Jordan Howard, and he's just been killing it. 2 weeks ago, I also told you T.Y. Hilton should be starting now that Moncrief is injured, and as you saw, T.Y. Hilton was the best wide receiver in fantasy this week, and last week he had an okay game, but I think it's going to be all uphill for T.Y. Hilton, or all downhill for T.Y. Hilton to say. Jeremy Curley, I told you to pick him up last week, 3% owned. Jeremy Curley had a great game. He had 14 points in fantasy, 20 points in PPR, 10 targets, 6 catches, 84 yards, and a TD. So, yeah, if you picked up Jeremy Curley last week, you should be pretty happy. If you actually started him, that would be awesome. And then let's go to, I've got it, kind of Venn diagrammed in here, the good and the bad. We got Brian Quick. I told you to probably pick up Brian Quick off your waiver wire. And Brian Quick still had 10 targets, but he only had 6 points this week. But the good thing about that is he's still in the top 20, or I think it was top 25 for wide receivers. So he was startable last week, but it was just really bad. It was a bad week for, there was a few high-end scores in wide receiver, and the rest of them were just kind of mid-range. And then we'll go over to our good and ugly. Darren Sproles is our good and ugly. He looked really good. He had a lot of plays at him. He got you like 12 points in PPR if you started him this week, and only like 10 in standard. But the thing is they got him the ball a lot. Like, they gave him carries, they threw him a ball a lot. So I think it was good. It was ugly also because it wasn't a lot of points, but it was good because he's getting the ball. And then we have CJ Fedorix, who I told you about last week, and you wouldn't think he'd be good, but he is good because he was the 12th ranked tight end, so you would have been starting him in a 12-team standard league. But the sad part about it, he beat Jordan Reed, he beat Jason Witten, Dennis Pitta, Zach Ertz, and Kyle Rudolph, but he only had 7 fantasy points, so it's kind of good, and he was high up in the tight end rankings, but only 7 fantasy points, so it was good and ugly at the same time. And then we got one that's good, bad, and ugly. Dontrell Inman. He's good because he's on Phillip Rivers' offense, and the defense can't stop anything. He's going to get a lot of passes thrown on that offense. The bad part is it was a low snap game for him. He only had like 3 targets, but he wasn't in that much. It was really weird, and I'm gonna call that a bad and an ugly. So we'll kind of see on Inman, but I'm leaning toward the shine away from him, fading Inman. And then Hooper was like a no-show this week. I think he had 1 target at Denver. That might have just been the matchup, but it was pretty bad. So Hooper's not somebody that I'm going to be looking forward to, but, he could pop back up on our radar. Like I said, he has been targeted just as much as Jacob Tamme this year. Probably not anymore, but still pretty high up there. We're going to move on to Eddie Royal. Eddie Royal had an ugly game this week. He was still injured. I still like Eddie Royal. If you don't know, Brian Hoyer in the past 3 weeks has been a top fantasy quarterback. Since Jordan Howard's running so well, all the wide receivers in Chicago are getting better. So Eddie Royal had an ugly game, but I still think it's good. We have Kenneth Dixon. He was still injured. It was ugly. He only got like 1 carry or 3 carries and 1 target in the passing game, so nothing really yet. And then we have CJ Spiller down here, as Seattle was on a bye, so it's I put him in the ugly, but it's not really ugly. It's not to know yet. Cameron Brate, I'm like halfway through watching this Tampa Bay game, and I think he's had like 1 target, and the other tight end has had a target, so it's kind of weird. I don't know if they're working in a third-string tight end because, Cameron Brate was the second string behind Safarian Jenkins, so they've had the third-string tight end in, and he has a catch. So Cameron Brate's kind of having an ugly right now, but you'll be able to see more toward the end of this game. Okay, so let's go on to the picks that I think for next week. Brian Hoyer, as I was just talking about for the last 3 weeks, top 5 fantasy quarterback. Brian Hoyer has the starting job in Chirac. I think he'll be a lot better than Jay Cutler. I'm not a fan of Jay Cutler. He's not very good. And then it's not like you're going to go out and just like play Brian Hoyer all the time. He's a good streamer, you know. Like if you need a quarterback this week because your team's on bye, like Brian Hoyer. Cameron Meredith, he's huge. He's like 6'4", 215 pounds, wide receiver for Chicago. And since Kevin White's down with an injury, I really like Cameron Meredith, and I think that they're going to have to be throwing the ball off because Chicago's defense is not that great. And so I like Cameron Meredith and I like Brian Hoyer. And then Sammy Coates. Sammy Coates had 6 catches for 140 yards, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had 11 targets though, so it was 5 balls that he didn't manage to catch. He did have a drop touchdown. It was crazy. Sammy Coates, despite the great game that he still had some suspect plays, but Sammy Coates will be a hot pickup this week. He's not my favorite, but he will be a hot pickup. I do like him. He should be picked up, but just not somebody who I'm going strictly after. When you get 11 targets and you drop a touchdown, I think that was just because he was open versus a decent Jets defense, but we'll see. Definitely worth picking up, but not somebody that I'm going to throw in and start right away. Bilal Powell for the Jets running back, he's getting 56% of the snaps over Matt Forte. For some reason, that turned into a 50-50 running back game. So, you have to pick up Bilal Powell. He's a great running back, and he's getting the looks there, so he can bust off. Adam Thielen and Cordell Patterson, I kind of put him here as like a matching pair. I feel like everybody's going to want Adam Thielen this week, but I think that'll be the best game that he has of his year. Cordell Patterson, if you looked, he had 4 for 39 and a touchdown, but he also had designed running plays. It seems like that Minnesota offense is just trying to get away to, get some. They're like a scrappy offense. They like pick up yards here and there, and with Sam Bradford in and all the injuries, they're using Asiata and McKinnon, and Cordell Patterson's running the ball, and they're throwing to anybody. So I really like Patterson just because of the versatility of him, and I think he's actually a better pickup than Adam Thielen. And then also we've got Chris Hogan. He was 4 for 114, and he didn't have a touchdown, but he's their long threat in New England. And seeing that Julian Edelman hasn't had a breakout game at all this year, not a touchdown at all. I really like Chris Hogan as a pickup, so I kind of think that Julian Edelman owners need to trade away unless they feel like that he's going to have better days ahead of him. Let's move on here to just some notes I have for Week 6. Handcuff Zeke. If you're not handcuffing Ezekiel Elliott after you saw what Alfred Morris did, just like Ezekiel Elliott did versus Cincinnati, and you saw those huge holes offensive lines opening up, like he's just that running game's too good not to handcuff him. Like if Zeke goes down for an injury, God forbid, then Morris is going to come in right behind and be running like crazy. So definitely handcuff Zeke if you're a Zeke owner. Trade Hilton up. T.Y. Hilton had 2 of his best weeks this week, and I think 2 weeks before that, and so I just don't like the fact that Andrew Luck has been sacked 20 times in 20 quarters. He's been sacked once in every quarter of this 2016 season, and that's just prone. Like he's prone for injury. Like he's getting hit. He was very injured early in his career, and he kind of bounced back as a tough man. But with all the amount of times that he's getting hit, I just don't trust it. Trade Alshon. I think you should trade Alshon Jeffrey right now. Like, as soon as possible, get whatever you can for him. The game where Cutler started this week, he threw 43 times. Alshon Jeffrey was 6 targets. I don't know if you watched the game, but Alshon Jeffrey was pissed at, not Cutler, I'm sorry, Hoyer. Alshon Jeffrey was pissed at Hoyer. He kept throwing his hands up and saying he was open all the time, and they just don't have a good connection. And Alshon started to be vocal about it, and like I said, Hoyer's been targeting everybody but Jeffrey. So trade Jeffrey. He's a high name. He's a name recognized target. Trade him. Trade for Isaiah Crowell. I like Isaiah Crowell. He had a terrible game this week versus New England, but I think that the only thing that Cleveland's going to be able to do with all the hurt quarterback situation is just run the ball. And, mark my words here, I could see Cleveland coming out next week and running the option read with Terrell Pryor and Isaiah Crowell and having a really good running game. So, trade for Gronk. Gronk had a really good game last week, but the stats didn't show it. And New England can support 2 tight ends. So people see that Martellus Bennett caught 3 touchdowns and Gronk is not in, 100% of the snaps. He still played like 70%, but New England can support 2 tight ends. So I like Gronk. More notes. Jordan Howard plus Brian Hoyer makes the Bears wide receivers better. The fact that Jordan Howard can run the ball and the fact that Brian Hoyer isn't Jay Cutler, the Bears wide receivers have better value, except for Alshon. It's weird. So, I'm looking at, Bears tight end and the guy Meredith that I just told you about. And Alshon had a better game this week, he had a... I just don't know. I just don't trust Alshon with Hoyer, but I do think that Hoyer makes all the Bears wide receiver better. And then Pal Forte, as we talked about earlier, they're 50-50 split, sad face there. It's just sad to see any running back get hit with the 50-50 split for fantasy. Not necessarily if you're a Jets fan, then you're like, yay, my running backs are going to be healthy in the preseason or in the postseason. But if the Jets make it to the postseason, their season might already be over. But it's a 50-50 split, it sucks for fantasy. Antonio Gates returns, so watch Hunter Henry's value. I do think that it's just the amount of throws that Phillip Rivers has to make to keep them in a game. Henry will have value, but do watch, now that Gates has returned, what happens there. And then earlier we talked about the Sammy Coach drops. So, don't be too crazy on Sammy Coates there because I don't trust it. You dropped a touchdown. Ben Roethlisberger is like one of those guys that I think really remembers that stuff. They have a lot of weapons there. Marcus Wheaton's a good weapon. Antonio Brown, running backs out of the backfield. I think Sammy Coates had a really good game, but I think a lot of people are going to spend a lot of fab dollars on him this week if you're in a auction league, and I wouldn't be one of those people. So. Done for week 6. Thanks for all the subs, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm up to over 300 subs, probably 350 or something like that. A lot of good support. My view count's going up. My NFL picks last week had over 2,300 views, so I appreciate that. Guys, in the comments, if you pick up somebody like Gio here, Gio said he put in his claim for Hunter Henry. Thanks for the tip, bud. Let me know, guys. If Gio started Hunter Henry last week, he picked him up off the waiver wire from my tip, and Hunter Henry finished as the number 2 fantasy tight end. So I want to know if you're making good on these pickups and what's happening in your league. So hit me up with some comments down below. Click that subscribe button. Give me some thumbs up. Share this with your friends, guys. Let them know. There's free fantasy advice here every week. Help you win your league. Free money, free picks. Holler at your boys. Have a good week 6.